Hello and welcome everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Today we're going to talk to a very old friend of mine, DC Davis. I've known DC for a while now, and he's one of the most distinguished project managers that I have known in my career. And there's a lot more that that all of us can learn from DC. So without further ado, I just want to firstly say, DC, thank you for taking the time to speak to me, and for giving all of us the opportunity to learn a little bit about yourself and a few things like project management and a few other things about yourself. So it'll be an interesting conversation, DC. So thank you first.
You're welcome.
Cool. So, DC, I want to start off by asking you a question. Like, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your journey so far, and, what do you do now and stuff like that? So please, DC.
Okay. Well, James DC Davis. I've been working for Honeywell since 1988. Started out in their aerospace group, then ended up being like one of the first people back in the old days when you did Fortran and COBOL and T-ball and all those type of things. Was one of the very first people then to move into doing PCs. Did some of the HR work for the PCs and everything else. They liked what I did so much, so corporate picked me up. They decided that, hey, I put the first call center in for the company, started working for corporate a while. When I started working for corporate, I ended up becoming the Y2K program manager for all of Honeywell around the world. Mm-hmm. And not just for IT, but for manufacturing and for facilities and supply chain and our products. And I managed, to give you a little bit of background of how much, I managed about 3,000 project managers at that time that we had around the world that we did to run that. And we finished that up about 9 months early, and we ended up coming in over 12 Sigma on it, and under about 19 million under budget. So we did pretty well with that. So a little bit of project management. I ran the CRM COE for the company for a while. Then came back and started working and did just some regular project management where we do, I came back and started working for one of the SBUs and working project management for them, letting really my kids grow up and having time with them and spending time with my kids and growing up there. Then again, they moved us back into corporate again. I just started taking over a lot of the finance stuff and doing a lot of stuff. Was one of the first people in the company that they switched me over to Agile and started learning Agile, and then really started using Agile for the last 5-6 years on the project for project management. So, and then within the last month, I was able to retire from Honeywell. So happy. One of the big things I always, been is, all the way along here, one of the things I've also done, and pretty much everybody knows me, is you can't tell ever on these things, but I'm pretty tall and everything else. And all the way along, I've been an international volleyball player. Mm-hmm. So I go out and I play volleyball with all my friends all over the world. And unfortunately this year with COVID, no US Open, but so the positive part of that was I'm still the third place for the US Open for 55s and above last year. So anyway, that's a little bit of where I'm at.
So basically the theme I'm getting is you've led a little bit of a boring life. You have a little bit of project management experience, which is like about 30 years. And you've managed small projects, which are anywhere from about, a few hundred to sometimes 3,000 managers. So a little, you have a little bit of experience, which is good to hear. And not a lot of variety in your life as well, DC, which is, like volleyball and tennis and stuff like that, which is interesting. That's good to know, DC.
Mountain biking, hiking now,
Oh, none. Okay. So, not a lot of variety. Okay.
No.
So the first question I have for you, DC, outside of the introduction is more around project management. And, like, of course, in jest, we say small projects and not a lot of experience, but you're one of the most distinguished project managers that I have met and I've worked with. And I've worked very closely with you, so I can vouch for that. I've seen that. So what makes a good project manager at DC? I mean, what makes a good one, or what makes a successful one, or what's the secret sauce to it?
Two main things: listen and be flexible.
Hmm.
I mean, you really have to listen to the people you're talking with and what you're growing with, and in the planning, and listening to the people, because what happens is we tend to talk different languages. We all think we're talking English all the time, but what business talks English and how IT talks English are two completely different subjects.
Hmm.
And I found that even true within IT groups within our groups. I think one of the funniest stories I sort of had from that was I used to work with two groups of people from India that I worked from. And they were actually on one floor separate from each other in the same building. And one time I had to get on at 3 a.m. in the morning and talk to them, because although they both spoke English, they're both in the same group and everything else, they couldn't translate between them because of what the knowledge is. And sometimes the knowledge is where you're at, is you've got to get out of your own head of where you're thinking they're coming and get into the head of where the people that you're talking to is, and listening to them. And then the other thing you got to realize, and the second thing that I said, is flexibility. Because flexibility is what works for one project never works for other. I worked over 30 years with project management, and I don't think I did a single project that were ran the same way. Even though we do some of the basics and everything else, but because of who you're working with, what you're working with, what project you're working on, what type of materials we're working with, what subject matter, you have to completely change your philosophy to work within that area. And that's very difficult for people, because people don't like change, but change is inevitable.
It's amazing you say that, DC, and they say the best things in life are free, and I'd say the best things in life are free and simple. It's amazing how you've simplified such very complex concept or a task like project management, and how you've just broken it down to two extremely simple things, which speaks, I must say, DC, volumes of your experience and the amount of experience you have, which is amazing. So you mentioned another thing, DC, when you were talking about your introduction, which is about Agile. And so I guess my question around Agile is, what is Agile? When can Agile be used? When should it not be used? And have you seen, what would you say are the pitfalls that Agile must avoid, DC?
Okay. So years and years I did waterfall. I just 15 years. When I first heard Agile, I was saying, this is never going to work. This is not going to be right. It's not going to be there. Again, the trick with Agile is getting business owners into it. And it's really having your business owner there every single day in your sprint calls, in your work, everything you're doing, and getting that business owner to really buy into that. And I found that, when you first start doing it, IT people really don't want to give the business person that much involvement in it. I've been very lucky that I've got business owners that have really bought into the fact that they must be there, they must be on the project, they must be there every day. And I have a business owner that is pretty much my equivalent on the project as me. And we got to the point where we started doing these sprint calls that you couldn't tell who the business person was, who the business owner is, versus who the IT person is. Because when you still really start breaking these stories down to smaller and smaller pieces, when you break these things down to say where the business owner is saying things in the words they're speaking, what you find, when I talked about before, listening and talking two different languages, you have that story that you start. You put a story in there, you have the story in a two-week piece. You put the story in there, You have your developer develop it, and they turn around and hand it to the business owner that same week, or maybe the next week at the most. The business owner looks at that and goes like, that wasn't what I said at all. And all of a sudden it's like, what do you mean? That's, this is exactly what you said. And I could have said, yes, that's absolutely true and everything else. But what happens is there starts becoming this understanding between the two of what they say and what they mean. And they start learning each other's language, and they start saying, oh, well, this is it. And then the IT person starts explaining why it doesn't work, and the owner starts understanding that too. And then you start realizing, hey, we made this decision, and now we start going off in a different direction as you go over sprint and sprint and sprint. And they start realizing the business owner says, hey, we said this is what we want, but this is really what we really wanted. And you start going that way, and you start doing that really well, and you start iterating that, and you start going into the areas you really need to do. And I found that even this last time, 5-6 years, I keep on learning more and more Agile is. The thing that I have with the issue is the people that we work with, a lot of times the IT people want to still do their waterfall, and they make this sound like it's Agile, but they're really doing waterfall. Until you break that and start doing it. And this last project that I worked on, we had absolutely a great tool where we had this new tool, Forge, that we added. And one of the things we said was the business owners are going to validate the data. And we went like, hold on. Business owners aren't smart enough to go out there and hold on to the data. And you know what? We had these new tools, Paxata, that goes in there. They could look directly at the data. They didn't have to look at Tableau reports, anything. And all of a sudden, these business owners start looking at, okay, here you're loading the data. Yeah, we told you to load this field, but when we actually saw what this was in this field, that wasn't what I meant you to have. And so we turned these things over, things that would have taken, in a waterfall, maybe at the end of the project, and said that's the wrong thing and getting it. We start turning these around in days and weeks, and we'd start getting this immediate response. And the business owners and the developers started talking directly what you needed. And, well, let me show you this one. Let me show you that one. And all of a sudden, we got the entire company up within 10, 12 weeks on, 10 different SAP systems and everything else, things you've never seen done before, because we were working truly Agile and we weren't trying to do waterfall on this. And it was amazing, and it was absolutely incredible. Now, having said that, that's nice and wonderful for some projects, but there are projects that are things like, and I really believe infrastructure type of projects, where Agile really doesn't work. You don't want to be saying, oh, this is what we want, and now there's something different as you go through. You really need to have, for infrastructure, a timeline. You need to have a start. This is what we're trying to get to. These are the materials going. Here is what we're trying to get. Here is our KPIs on them. Here's what we're trying to get when we complete these things. And on infrastructure projects, Agile's just not the way to go. You need to go back to the old waterfall way. It's better. It has, good KPIs. We all like metrics, and everybody loves to have metrics. Unfortunately, one of the things with Agile is these metrics that people want to do, CPI and SPI that they want to do, they're waterfall. They don't even make sense at all when you're starting to talk about how Agile works. Because if you start trying to keep with those things that you have at the beginning and make those same timelines in that piece, when you're constantly iterating and you're constantly rotating and you're constantly going where the business wants you to go to and getting you the product that you really need to get to, those go out the door. And saying those actually hurt people, because then they start doing it. I mean, one of the things that you heard the other day with Agile was they go like, well, where's your defect tracker? And I went like, what defect tracker? I mean, have you not understood what Agile means? Agile means that, hey, this business owner that I just told you earlier said, oops, I said this was the wrong one. So you went back in the story and you got the next one and you changed and you fixed it, and that was completely the story. Or you say, hey, the story wasn't complete. You put a new story in to get these other little bits that you hadn't seen before. There's not defects in this. Because you're working together, this is the process. This is what you get done. So I'm pretty excited. I bought into Agile, put hook, line, and sinker.
Interesting, DC. I really love how passionate you are about Agile and project management, DC. It's amazing. And there was a saying I read recently. I think it was more of Agile is more of a mindset. It's a way of thinking. It's not, the last thing it is a bunch of checklists that you must follow. You must follow. You must follow. That's not it. It's just against the whole philosophy of things being Agile.
It's
So
exactly right. And different people will work different way with Agile. It's absolutely true.
yeah. So moving on to a lighter topic, DC, is so you mentioned that you just retired and it's been about a month. So two questions about that. One, what do you plan to do in retirement? So what's your plan? And the next thing is, how did it feel the first day when you woke up and you didn't have to go to work?
I'm planning having to work as much as you do, and nobody nowadays, unfortunately, works 8-hour days. I mean, it's nice to work 8-hour days. It'd be lovely too. One of the things I found when I work is I work with a lot of people that work a lot of hours, and you have to have the same energy and going with them on that. And I finally got to a stage in my life where I said, hey, I need to get myself back down to an 8-hour day. And then I found that I just was right back working to 10-hour days instantly. And one of the things I've done always is I try to do sports. I try to do other things. As I said, I was really sort of an international volleyball player. I played with a lot of people from all over the country and the world. I know people from all the world playing. So my plan really, when I planned to retire, was to get back in shape. Everybody goes like, oh, you had a burst appendix and you were back working, a week later. You're in great shape and everything else. And like, no, I'm not in shape.
I remember that, and I can vouch for that, DC. I know that's a fact because I was there. Yes.
But I can tell you, me just hiking up the mountain here that I have right by my house, the first day I do it, I was like, I'm dying. We just don't do what, I've always sort of believed that you have to worry about the mental, the work always did mental. You had to do, your physical, and you had to do the soul. And those are the three things you've done. And my whole work life, unfortunately what happens is the mental starts being the thing that really just takes over all your hours of your day and everything else. And I'm now at a stage in my life that I can work more on the physical and the soul. So I'm trying to get back in shape right up here. Yesterday I went out on a 6 mile hike. This morning I did a 10 mile mountain bike hike, and then another 2-hour hike. Then I go out swimming after that a lot of times, trying to get in shape. And I go hit some golf balls. I go out play tennis a couple of times a day. So I'm doing the things that I always said, always the things you do on vacation, or things you do on the weekend that you usually don't have time for the weekend. Even the things around the house that you just don't have time to get everything cleaned up and to fix and everything else. So it's sort of like an extended vacation.
Interesting. So what I'm hearing is that you had a boring life, it just got more boring, DC. That's what it just seems like. But interesting. I mean, hiking, mountain bikes. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of different things, tennis. And
well, I hate to say it last week, I said it at work. I actually stopped and I dug a ditch last week too, though.
Oh.
I was mountain biking by my church, and some of the guys there were working, and they were, some of the volunteers were doing quick. So I stopped, got off my bike, and I dug the ditch for them.
Oh my God. Okay. So it is. Okay.
So it's ditch. I guess it's ditch digging now for me, huh?
Oh, so okay.
Good career.
So that's interesting. So I guess the other part of the question, DC, is how did you feel the first day you knew you did not have to go back into work? What went through your mind?
Well, I think you're a little bit anxious. I hate to say it,
Mm-hmm.
and some of the things that come out from the work and everything else. There's a lot of things that when you think you're retired, there are things that, hey, didn't this, they said, here are things they told you they're going to do, and they come back with you and tell you, hey, they're not doing those things, and a little bit of anxious there, and you have some few other things that don't go your way and everything else. So you're a little bit anxious when you first get out, when you're doing it. As I said, it's a couple weeks later already, and one of the things I always did also, one of the reasons I did volleyball, and unfortunately I can't do it right now, but one of the reasons I did volleyball and I did these other sports was that was always a stress reliever for me. To me, that was one of the things I had to do when I was working to get, to relieve my stress and to get it out there. And I had a call today from from my workers, the guy who took over my job, and I'm going, okay, do you need help for anything else? No, I just called to say hi. And I said, well, this is, is there something on? What's going on? And tell him playing all this stuff. And he goes like, oh, and by the way, I wanted to congratulate you. We went live on your project. It all went well, right on time and on target. And
Interesting.
it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's only been 2 weeks and I had completely forgotten about it completely already. It was nice to hear successful. I love the people I worked with. I'm really happy for them that it was successful and everything else. But I mean, I've always compartmentalized my whole life, and it's already compartmentalized, and it's my previous life.
Interesting. Yeah, that's very interesting. So I'm sensing a sense of relief. The going away of stress. You've even forgotten a project that you'd worked on like 2 weeks back. So that's amazing, DC.
It's only another huge project for the company that needed to do. That was, 9-month project that we've been working on.
Oh man.
Affects
So
every part of the company.
So that's a small project then. That's another of your small projects, it looks
Another
like.
teeny project.
So, so another question, DC, is around, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, was some of the sports that you play. So I think there's a US Open for volleyball, and I think
Yes.
you play that. So can you talk a little bit about all the different sports that you play, and maybe touch upon some of that, DC, because I know you do some very good stuff, and I want people to know about that.
Oh, I've always sort of, it goes along with sort of some of my same belief that I have with project management and everything else. The more you know you don't know. And it's always been a sort of a whole way that I go in my life. I was always, as I was young, probably, I was a chess player, and I was a very good chess player. I was always just good enough to know how bad I was. I beat the third best player in the U.S.
Okay, so
But
not that good then.
that, so and I was a very good racquetball player. I could play racquetball and I could go behind my back through my legs, play left-handed the whole time. Did that very well. But you couldn't make a living at that, so I went to do this. I was a good basketball player. I was one of the few white men that could jump. I could go up and touch the top of the backboard. So people are used to saying, and I was always good enough, but I was just good enough to play people like Byron Scott and Fat Lever. They went my same college, and I play against them, and you see how really good pro basketball players are, and that you're not in that function. And I got into volleyball. I've been playing volleyball for 48 years or something ridiculous like that now. And I was always a very good volleyball player, but I was always just good enough to play the Olympic players and play the two-man sand and play them and everything else. And because you're alternate on the Pro Tour, you play these guys and you don't get a point against them because it used to have side-out scoring and everything else because they're just that much better. So I'm always one of those people that is just like good at everything, but not great.
Except
So
project
I've
management,
been
I
playing it
guess,
for years.
DC. Okay.
Oh,
So,
so I've
hmm,
used sports as my way. When I'm playing sports, my total focus is on whatever that sport is. I compartmentalize. I don't think about what's going on with my family, all my problems, issues that are
hmm,
going on with family life and everything else. I'm not worried about what's happening at work. Everything goes away, and I'm totally focused on that, whatever that thing is. Um, you know, playing tennis, playing golf, some of those type of things. It's just to get out there and to get yourself away from what you're doing right now and what your life and just, you know, I like to play. I've never been one of those people that could go into a gym and
hmm,
just do the, lift and everything else. I have to be
hmm.
playing something to do it. So,
Interesting. So, I know I don't have you for a long time, DC, but one last question, and I think probably in my mind, the most important question is what is your advice, DC, for someone who is in different phases of their career, preferably for someone who's starting off and then someone who's, just there where their career is just picking up momentum and you've run the whole marathon. So what's your advice for folks, DC?
um, be flexible. I mean, that's really a big piece of it, being flexible. See things through other people's eyes. A lot of times you get so close to things, you don't see what the whole forest is. A lot of times you think the grass is greener someplace else. A lot of times when you're looking at things, oh, if I jump here or jump there, it'll be better and everything else. I've always sort of gone, and as I drive to work, I look outside the road and I see, I see some of these homeless people, and I go like, I've looked at it and I said, look how lucky I am. Don't look at what all the issues you have, but look at how much you've been given and how much you just, that I'm lucky to be able to have a job sometimes, and to be able to do the work. And I didn't, there's a lot of really good people out there right now who get laid off. And that says nothing about the person at all. It has nothing to do with the person. Those are situations. So as far as retirement and I've done, one of the things I did was I always, I didn't spend a lot of money on a lot of things that a lot of people do. I didn't have to have the fanciest car. I didn't have to have the fanciest house. I didn't, I've slowly built things up. I haven't tried to do things immediate. I tried to do slow. And one of the things I did the whole time along was put aside so much of our income for retirement, and I've been doing that my entire career. So when this time comes when you get burned out, and we all get burned out and things and everything else, you don't trust. I didn't trust, hey, we're going to have a pension. We're going to do this. I didn't trust that. You hear Social Security. Social Security can't continue on the way things. So put stuff aside for yourselves. Too many people are all for themselves. Don't look at that. Look at your long-term on that. Long-term planning the same way you do planning or everything else. So
Interesting.
that's what I do.
It's very, very, very interesting, DC. I think some very key points there. You've touched upon a little bit of empathy, flexibility, gratitude, and I think probably one of the most important is to save, right? So don't spend everything you have. So I think it's very, and I think hearing it
Also
from
live in the
someone.
moment too, sometimes too, but
True.
but
Yes. Yeah. Don't. Yes. That's also true. Don't kill yourself to save. I mean, that's also
yeah.
that's a fair point. Yeah. So that's very interesting, DC. So DC, I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but this has been very, very interesting. I've learned a lot, and I hope folks who are watching have learned a lot too. And I have a lot of other questions for you, DC. So I might set up some time again in the next few months for us to talk again, because I want to talk a little more about project management, about Agile, and all of that with you. Because if there's anyone I can learn it from, who has the theoretical know-how, but also I think unparalleled practical experience in project management, Agile, and even waterfall for that matter. I think if there's anyone who has that, is probably you. So I think there's probably going to be another list of questions that's coming in your email sometime, and we will be talking soon again.
You don't want me to retire, do you?
I,
You better do it soon. I'll forget all about this.
So I definitely did not want you to retire, DC. So I can categorically say that. Yes, so that is a fact.
Leave the company.
I'm sure I can. Yeah, I can. I agree. So okay.
It's always a pleasure talking to you, Agnel.
Thank you.
I really have enjoyed the time we spent together.